All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a late night edition of the Bare Necessities podcast. I know both Reese and I are very upset with the outcome of the Vikings game, but hey, what can you do? Reese, besides the Bears absolutely breaking our hearts, how are you feeling tonight?
Oh, I'm doing all right. I mean, it's not even that I didn't even expect the Bears to really come out and win this game. If you would have told me that, hey, the Bears lost this game because their completely inexperienced defensive backfield, gave up, 3 irresponsible touchdowns, I would be okay with it. It's the fact that they really were only responsible for 1 touchdown, their second one, and relatively the defense did a great job the rest of the game. The defensive line, especially up front, Roquan Smith was doing great. It looked like the front seven made it their mission to just absolutely continue Dalvin Cook not being able to do anything against this Bears defense. It's just remarkable how easily they shut him down. But outside of that, then you flip it onto the other side of the ball, and that's when things get to things you don't really want to talk about as far as just the typical, a lot of what we've been saying for so long with this team being able to drive it 80 yards and, not even 80 yards, the 60. Between the 20s, they do a great job, but that's about where it finishes up.
Yeah, and I think that was the most frustrating part about today's game is like, okay, let me get this out here. The refs screwed us. Like, let's get it right. The refs did screw us. That Tease Tabor penalty.
That was the worst one. Yeah.
I don't think I'm being hyperbolic that's probably the worst penalty I've seen all year. Like out of any team.
It was rough.
Like that. I don't know how I don't know what else he was supposed to do. Like that's exactly what you want. And as far as a player safety thing goes, like you don't want Tease Tabor to target Dalvin Cook's head. You want him to go low on the running back. He was trying to stiff through the offensive lineman. And he ended up making the tackle too, which is the most ridiculous part of it. Regardless, that really screwed us, and that put 7 points on for the Vikings. Obviously, we had a couple personal fouls. Some were a little bit debatable, but for the most part, those were fine. And then the big thing is like that blown punt return where we just where Bird completely muffed the punt, and that hurt us too. It only put up 3 points on the board, but you have to wonder how differently the game could go, because following that point, we made 4 trips to the red zone, and we went for 4th down on all of them. We ended up scoring on that very, very last one, which quote unquote would have tied the game. Obviously, things would have went differently because the Vikings wouldn't have been playing the way they were playing, but like if we would have went for field goals on those, we would have been in a winning position. I think Matt Nagy made it his goal in this game to stick it to all the people saying that he has been not aggressive this season and showing us the reason why we don't go for it on 4th down in the red zone.
Yeah, I guess so. And I think really it's just the red zone issues, which obviously, they could have scored so many more points, and that's super frustrating. But it's just there's a root of a couple problems that really start to, develop in the red zone. And that's, A1 is just the types of plays that they're selecting down in that area of the field. It's just, and usually it's kind of out of cadence too. It's not really what you'd want. It's the predictable 1st and 10 run that gets stuffed every time, and then they try to recover, and it just never quite works out. And another thing too, and I think it's quite indicting on Matt Nagy, is, when we get down to that part of the field, it needs to be coached into Justin Fields' head that, like, you don't take sacks, especially, I mean, the one on the screen pass was terrible, but it shows itself in other parts of the field too. And it's just, hey, like, eventually at some point you got to cut your losses, throw the ball away. A couple instances where we took sacks that are far too large and got us into 2nd and long situations where this team just defaults settings into running the ball on 2nd and 17 plus, which is just remarkable, honestly. And they never get anything out of it.
Seriously, it's the most predictable play out of Matt Nagy's playbook, because if it's 2nd and long, you can almost bet that there's going to be a run, and that is the worst statistical play in all of football. It is literally the worst statistical play in all of football. I don't know if the coaching staff thinks that they're trying to be like slick with it and they're like, oh, they won't expect this one. It's like, no, it's literally all over your film. Like if you spend even a second watching the Chicago Bears this year, you know that they run it very, very frequently on second and long. Even though like, and I don't understand the resistance from this coaching staff to call RPO. Like especially in the red zone with young quarterback, man. It's like if you look at the Packers run so many little play action or like little boots for Aaron Rodgers. They call this play probably, especially in the red zone, at least 5 or 6 times a game. We didn't see a single one of these. And this gets back to why the red zone issues are so bad. Not only do they have the most predictable run call, which is just right down the middle with David Montgomery, they don't even try to do the cute stuff where they have, Damiere Byrd in the back and they do a little fake handoff or anything like that. They don't do that. They do it either run it straight up the gut or they're gonna do it out of empty, rather than just having it be, either 21 personnel or whatever it may be. And actually trying to get a little bit of a boot action off of it, condense the field for Fields to read. If he doesn't have an option there, just let him run it, get a few extra yards. He's quick enough that they're going to try to respect him and they're not going to over pursue him. And for that reason, he's almost guaranteed to get like at least 3 or 4 yards on every one of those plays. They respect Aaron Rodgers enough to not even rush him hard.
Yeah, well, the thing is they're doing the wrong kind of zone running scheme in that situation. If you're going to bring in to play a zone running scheme, then make it a zone read. And at that point, make it into an RPO. If you so feel to compelled to do zone running, but they don't even ever try to do on those conventional running plays where it's just a handoff to Montgomery and it's a zone running play down on the goal line. They set themselves up for failure because they allow teams to just stay honest in their assignments. The defensive or the nose can stay in the A gap and they're all able to just play their assignment. Whereas if you do something, it doesn't even have to be that cute, but you bring a guard over on a trap block or something like that and try to develop a hole instead of, relying on Montgomery to eventually find one. I think they'd have a hell of a lot more success, but it's just not the logical train of thinking that you'd expect to see from a coaching staff at this level, where it just seems obvious if you're going to try that kind of play, at least do it right and something that caters actually into a strength, which there isn't too many that this offense has. So, very puzzling.
And, like, when they do call a passing play, it's just like, the play call is always so confusing. Like, let me first make this clear. The Bears should have had a couple more touchdowns. I mean, the Damiere Byrd's drop for a first down in the red zone, that on a 4th and down play, that was brutal. You can't do anything better than that. Justin Fields was under intense pressure. He gets the ball in the perfect spot. He has to come down with that. Okay, that would have extended a play. And then you look at Jimmy Graham. Sure, Patrick Peterson got his hand on it a little bit, but he should have came down with that ball one-on-one. That's why he's paid to be here. Like, that is his literal one function in the NFL pretty much right now is to do that, and he can't come down with it. And then Darnell Mooney, that could have been a touchdown. It was hard to see, and I understand the refs like leaning with the play on the field. Like, I think you could make a good point that was a touchdown. But Darnell Mooney, you have to get your feet down. But also the play call in both Graham's drop and Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet's, like, I guess he didn't have a drop there. Justin kept it a little too far inside. Patrick Peterson was able to get a hand on it. All those are just terrible route combinations to have in the red zone.
Yeah.
Like, why are you putting Justin Fields in a position where he has to throw across the grain to the outside receiver at the hash mark that is just an impossible throw for most quarterbacks. Like, even Aaron Rodgers is going to miss those 50, maybe even 60, 65% of the time. And Justin Fields didn't even really miss it, but you're also putting your receiver in a bad position where it's like, okay, he has to be like looking over his shoulder all the way back across the grain on the field. He has to focus on not only catching the ball, but also getting his hands down. Young receiver too. Terrible, terrible route combination there. And then also both Jimmy Graham and Cole Kmet's routes were just hitch routes.
Oh,
literally hitch routes.
A favorite.
It's so dumb. It makes no sense.
To me, it seems so puzzling, the pass plays that they run, like in goal to go situations. It seems like they're almost the same kind of pass plays you want to run for like a 10 to 15 yard gain. They always seem they seem to take so long to develop, like in the red zone for the Bears. It's crazy. And it makes you think, where's the drag route? Where's the tight end cross?
There are none.
Where's the quick slant? When you're in man coverage, where's the man beaters? I mean, every other damn team's doing it. Where's the pick route? You want to get something really easy for
where's the wide receiver bunch? Like,
yeah,
it's clear as day. Like, literally, even some of the worst offensive coordinators in the NFL know how to do this stuff. It doesn't make any sense. It's either we're spread out wide or we're in a heavy set. Those are the two options. That's all weird. Matt Nagy's playbook is. It is so weird. And the other thing is, like, when we're in the situations where the offense needs to make the plays, the offense has been making the plays this year. And we saw it both in this game. Justin Fields, man, he is so good at pushing the ball down the center of the field. I have no clue why we don't run that play that we push the ball down the center of the field with both Kmet in this game and then Graham in the Monday night game against the Steelers. Where I'm sure you remember it wasn't the last play. It was the drive that stalled out before that.
Yeah.
Where Justin just like lays it right over the top, gives his tight end enough room to just go up and grab it. Like, I mean, those are in Justin Fields' DNA. That's what he's good at. Allow him to do that. Where are the intermediate crossing routes through the inside?
Oh,
I don't think. How many times have you seen that play this year?
Like never, hardly ever. And almost every other team in the league is running that kind of play, especially when they have bigger tight ends. It's even like player personnel choice at times that's really questionable too. I don't even really quite know where to start. I'm trying to think of a couple of specific instances, but there's times where I was just like,
Thomas Graham.
Yeah.
I mean, even just on a whole team level.
And like, your formations out there, sometimes like Mooney and it's like Graham and Kmet. And it's like, not really the three that I'd choose. Like, I understand how short we are on some of these players, and Demir Bird couldn't catch or receive a punt at all today. So it was kind of useless having him out there. So can't put too much into that, but it was just such an odd game. I mean, I don't know if it seems so typical, but at times it was just like they had so many things that are served up on a silver platter. They had the pick, they had that blocked punt. They started in positive territory like multiple times in this game. And
they had a dominant finish in that final half was pure dominance out of this defense and getting it to the red zone. Truthfully, the offense could have scored 25 to 30 points this half. I mean, sorry, if they would have been able to be at least somewhat competent.
And I know it was a garbage time touchdown, but they had a play for Jesper Horsted and he ended up getting open. Where was he all game? He had that one touchdown, and this man is showing up for 2 touchdowns, and you wouldn't have think that he's even on the active roster in both games that he scored a touchdown in, because he just
think about it.
He appears and then scores and vanishes.
And what is he doing on those touchdowns?
He's coming back to the quarterback.
Well, he's coming back to the quarterback, just boxing out the same damn play that Cole Kmet drops every single week. He's dropped an end zone touchdown where he was just, all he had to do was box out and go and grab the ball every single week. And we also saw Jimmy Graham do it this week as well.
Yeah.
Like, the situational play calling is terrible, quite frankly. And like, even when you see like in the red zone where it's like, where the announcers are like, oh, the Bears have all tight ends now, not a single wide receiver. I'm like, that's not a good thing. That is not a good thing. That is a clear tell. And every single time an announcer has mentioned that in a game, the next play is always a terrible play. Same with like, truthfully, the Wildcat. Like, I've been thinking, and I think me and you have been thinking the same thing, that they're like trying to build something off of that. They're like, okay, in a time where they need it the most, they're going to definitely have Justin Fields tuck it, or it's going to be like a little lateral play out of that, or what, like Fields is going to get the ball, and it's like, okay, we're what are we, 4-10 now? It's like, when is this play gonna come?
It's the
I think
longest
we needed it
building
weeks
drum
ago.
roll ever. Like, it's just never ending. Like,
Seriously,
they're gonna have a nice trick play. It's coming. The actual jet sweep with Jakeem Grant is coming. No, it's still
David Montgomery for 1 yard. Seriously. And I think I even mentioned to you in this game, like, if Montgomery handed that off to Grant on the side, on the one play, I don't know, I can't remember how many plays they ran the Wildcat for, but one Wildcat play, if David Montgomery even had like a little bit of like RPO IQ, man, that ball would have been to the house with Jakeem Grant, because he had a one-on-one on the outside to beat. And I think I'm going to trust Jakeem Grant, who's one of the fastest guys in the NFL and a punt returner, than David Montgomery going up against the 10 guys that are lined up in the center of the in the center of the line. Like, seriously, man, it's just it's almost laughable at this point. And Justin Fields, I got to be honest, man, I think Justin Fields had a pretty good game. He missed that one pass to Montgomery in the end, Mooney in the end. But I've also noticed a pretty consistent issue for Mooney is that he's looking for the ball before he's supposed to be looking for it, and he slows down. So I don't know if that was necessarily on Fields. I mean, it was like right at the tip of Mooney's hands. It kind of makes me think that maybe Mooney was a little shallow on that route. And we saw a similar thing with David Montgomery where he went a little too deep. And this is an issue the Bears have had since Nagy has been here. Because even Trubisky was bad and he was inaccurate, but there were so many route depth issues by our wide receivers. And you could just tell Trubisky was never on the same page with the wide receivers. And that's, at the end of the day, like, Matt Nagy's coaching career will come down to this and why he will never be a good head coach in the NFL. Outside of the whole, personnel decisions, play calling, whatever it is, he is, as much as he likes to say he is not a detail-oriented coach. There has been so much sloppiness from all the players. Kmet can't catch a damn pass. I know statistically he had a pretty good night tonight. He made a lot of money off of like kind of meaningless dump-offs from Fields, which, I'm happy Fields is still doing that. But like, he's also dropping passes week after week. Kmet honestly could have had 700 yards this year. Like, he damn near drops as many passes as he catches. Seriously, like, he's had a good season statistically, but he has bricks for hands right now. And Matt Nagy can't teach that out of anybody. And I don't even blame it on the players. What's more likely, that Matt Nagy is not that good at coaching the details or assembling a staff that can coach the details, or every single player that Matt Nagy drafts is just incapable of running routes correctly?
Yeah, well, and I think it's the details, and what you also are kind of hitting on too, that, I think we always, nail on Nagy for the design and the concept, and when he does call plays, the play calling is bad. It's always been the execution with this team too. Mm-hmm. A good coach gets his team to execute, mint. It doesn't matter. There's sometimes you watch some football games and you realize that play was so well coached, it didn't really matter what the defense did there. The offense executed, be it a simple run play in like a pro set, just single back with 2 tight ends and 2 wide receivers, or if it's a fancy play out in the gun with 4 wide receivers and a running back in the backfield, something like that. It doesn't matter if it's coached well and it's executed well. The defense can only do so much to stop it. But what the Bears do, the Bears execute so poorly that they stop themselves on just so many instances. The defense doesn't have to do anything in the first place.
Mm-hmm. And it's also the scheme. That's like really the other key point. And I got to be honest, man. I think that I truthfully think this was Matt Nagy's last game. Like, I think this was his last game. The Bears are gonna have an opportunity. It's either gonna be this one or the next one. The Bears, if they either signal to their coach that he's gonna be fired, or they actually fire him before the season, you're able to start interviewing coaches within the last 2 weeks of the season, and the Bears absolutely need to take advantage of that. And I think that I saw one thing that I saw today is I saw Ryan Pace stay the entire game. And I think he kind of knew what he had to do,
He was drinking a lot of water from that water bottle, to say the very least. And I will say this, it's a shame that, Nagy can't go 4-12 this year, because think about how aesthetically pleasing it would be that he went 12-4, 8-8, 8-8, and then 4-12. He would have done a full. He would have done a full reversal from where he started.
Seriously,
but I think that pace. There's a couple good. The Monday Night Football camera work came in pretty clutch. We got to see Zimmerman, shoot a loogie out of his nose at one point. I think at about 5:45 left in the fourth. And then also a lot of clips of Ryan Pace pounding down some water and doing some hard thinking. So, we'll see what comes of it. I would not be surprised if this is Nagy's last game, or at the very least, like you said, that he kind of gets that intent for the Bears to move on, and so they can start moving into the interviewing process. But man, it was a disappointing enough game, I think, for sure.
Absolutely. And it stinks because Nagy is a nice guy and he looks very passionate, truthfully, about what he does and everything. But man, this offense, it's very poorly coached. And another just spotlight that kind of has loomed on Matt Nagy throughout his entire coaching tenure is how none of his wide receivers can block. That's why none of these little screen passes ever work, is because we have no one that can block. And that's a coaching thing, man. Like that's absolutely a coaching thing. It's actually more of a surprise when a wide receiver can block for us than when he can't. And it's not a hard thing. I mean, look at Kyle Shanahan's offenses. I mean, he takes damn near anyone from the practice squad or whatever it may be, and he's able to make them block. And that's a huge staple of Shanahan's offenses. It's not something that's complex. It's like, even though the overall scheme is bad, the team could be a lot better. Just if execution and the details were there, and not only those are there. But let's, listen, this loss was bad. I think Fields did fairly decent. I don't know about you, but let's talk a minute about the bright sides. Man, Robert Quinn, 16 sacks on the season now. How ridiculous. I mean, I think Richard Dent has the record right now at 17 sacks, right?
That is correct. Yeah, Richard Dent is the holder of it. Robert Quinn looked very good. That was an impressive sack today. The past couple of weeks, he's gotten some sacks that are basically just touching the quarterback on the ground. But today, that was a real nice move to get around the outside there. And I'm sure you're going to hit on more of it. But just from the defense in general, a lot of players that I would want to give shout-outs to. But I'll let you continue on.
Well, Akeem Hicks, man, what a comeback game. I feel like
that was a nice sack that he had too, just pummeled Cousins.
Dude, I think he had 2 sacks, and he could have had way more than that, man. Like, he was breathing down Cousins' neck, and I think we forget how good he is because he's been so injured over the past couple of years. It's going to be really interesting to see. I honestly kind of do want the Bears to re-sign him this offseason, and he wants to stay with the Bears, but I think they are going to be planning on getting younger. But I wouldn't understand it, because outside of being such a dominant player in the inside, even given his age, which he's not even that old. I mean, look how old Ndamukong Suh is, and Calais Campbell, who play pretty much the exact same position he plays on defensive line, and they're still tearing it up in the NFL. I think Akeem Hicks is more like the injury issue. I don't know. Maybe you can get him on a cheap contract, but he's also just on top of that, just an amazing person, like really a true leader in the locker room. And someone, if he's like, I'm going to really miss him, truthfully.
Yeah. I mean, he's always had a presence. I think that, I think that's what makes it so tough too. Not only as the person that he is, but the performance that you can see when he's really on top of his game. But it is also tough to have him out, most of the year. But it was good performance. I thought Angelo Blackson also played with a good edge tonight. Was very aggressive, and I like the way that he played. And of course, Thomas Graham as well. I think that he really kind of burst onto the scene. Had a couple really nice pass breakups. And got in the way, and they're definitely trying to pick on him at the beginning of the game, and he stood his ground, and eventually you weren't hearing his name getting called, and that's because they weren't really throwing his way that much. So I think that's a pretty impressive mark to make on your debut, and definitely excited to see what he can do in kind of a little bit more of a normal capacity for him.
Kirk Cousins had like 87 yards or something like that throughout the entire game, which is crazy, and the 2 touchdowns he had weren't really like that glamorous of touchdowns either. Thomas Graham, man, I loved seeing Thomas Graham out there. I don't know how he hasn't been on the roster right now. He looks miles better than Vildor. But even in the slot position, man, we had such a need at that slot position, and it seemed like our I don't know who really to put that on. Is that a Matt Nagy issue, or is that a Sean Desai issue of kind of having that questionability? I'm going to place it more on Desai, even though Desai did have a great game, but man, Thomas Graham has to play.
I think Desai in games, besides a couple situational instances, has been pretty good. I thought even one of the things that they brought up on the Monday Night Football broadcast, and sometimes you have to take it with a grain of salt, but they brought up the point where he's like, well, I didn't even know where to start with the strengths of these guys. And it's like, that doesn't rub off on me quite well. I mean, I understand that they're not people that he's working with very consistently. And, they're down on the practice squad. Sometimes he's just seeing them on scout team, stuff like that. But it definitely helps to have a little bit better idea of what your players' strengths are if you're playing with them. But what he did tonight worked out very well and keeping him to 17 points. And really, the defense was not an issue in this game at all,
which is so surprising. And that's why I ultimately think we're going to end up seeing Matt Nagy fired. I don't think we'll see it now, but I think that potentially tomorrow we might see it. Maybe not. I mean, we technically do have another week before we need to take advantage of the whole the coaching cycle, but I feel like now more than ever is the time to do it, because even despite all the adversity the defense faced, they played a game. Roquan Smith played crazy. Akeem Hicks played crazy. Robert Quinn played crazy. Some of our even teased Tabor on that play that he got called for a penalty. I mean, that was a great play by him.
Yep.
Thomas Graham, all these guys stepped up and just nothing. I mean, just flatlined, and even Justin Fields was playing well, and it just was not. And David Montgomery was averaging 7 yards per carry throughout the majority of the game, and it's none of that is good enough for Matt Nagy. It's laughable at this point. But any last comments, man? I'm just disappointed at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of just something's always got to go wrong, and nothing's just clicking at the right moment. On the drives where Fields has, bright moments, they don't pair it with Montgomery having nice runs. It's just all kind of unravels in some sort of way. But that's been the story for this season, and I think that, us Bears fans have gotten used to it pretty quickly. These losses don't really sting that much anymore, as much as just kind of shocking to see how it unfolds and all goes wrong. But yeah, other than that, looking ahead to next week and looking ahead to next year at this point, double digit losses doesn't sit well, and the Bears already hit it with 3 games to go. So there you go.
Oh, we can still finish with 7 wins, I suppose. But yeah, I know, very tantalizing. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll have another episode up this week sooner rather than later. We hope you enjoy these post-game podcasts. We're definitely going to try to standardize this a little more. And bear down, man.
Bear down.